Hello, I hope you're well. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today's video is my 2021 most anticipated releases historical fiction edition. If you watch my channel or have maybe even caught snippets of one or two of my videos, you probably know that I read a lot of historical fiction. It is my bread and butter, my most read genre by far. So I wanted to pull together a list of historical fiction books that I am really excited about that are being released in the first few months of 2021. That's what the purpose of this video is for, but I will have a part 2 that will cover a bunch of other genres as well. But why don't we dive right into it? The first book that I want to talk about is The House of Vespers by Paraic O'Donnell, and I believe that this book was originally released in the UK some time ago. So I think it's a case that this book is finally being released in the US this year in 2021. Depending on when this video goes up, it might actually already be released, so yay. From what I gather, this is a Victorian Gothic type of deal. A young woman, a seamstress, jumps from a window with a cryptic message sewn into her skin and is somehow believed to be connected to this rash of disappearances of young women in this community. Enter your trusty detective, his sidekick, and a journalist who are on a mission to solve this mystery. I personally love Victorian and Gothic literature. I studied it as an English major, and I really enjoy seeing modern reimaginings or interpretations of that subgenre that are done well. So I'm really hoping that this one is able to capture the atmospheric unease and all the mystery and plot twists and excitement that those original Gothic novels created and produced in its audience. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. The next book is A Tip for the Hangman by Allison Epstein, and this is a Tudor England focused historical fiction. I see it being billed as a historical thriller, and in it, the English playwright Christopher Kit Marlowe is approached by Queen Elizabeth I's spy master, who wants him to spy on Mary Queen of Scots while she's on house arrest, and kind of keep an ear to the ground and figure out what is going on with potential plots to overthrow Elizabeth in favor of putting Mary on the throne. One of the things I've come to know about my own historical fiction appetites, likes or dislikes, whatever you want to call it, is that I really enjoy historical fiction that focuses on a historical figure. I love novelizations of real individuals, and I think that's partly because it gives you kind of a baseline understanding of who that individual was that, in my case, often causes me to seek out nonfiction and learn more about who that individual was from credible nonfiction sources. So in this case, I'm intrigued to learn more about Christopher Marlowe. I think, as is the case with most of us, we know a lot about Shakespeare, but not many of us have actually studied Christopher Marlowe in any great detail. And I like that both Queen Elizabeth I and Mary Queen of Scots are characters here, but I do have a sense that they're more secondary to Kit Marlowe's story and involvement with them. To be honest, I have not been reading a lot of historical fiction set in Tudor England of late, but that is where my love of historical fiction started, so I'm kind of excited to be going back to my roots, as it were. The next book that I want to talk about is The Last Apothecary by Sarah Penner, which is actually a debut from this author. The book is told through dual plot lines, the first of which is set in the 18th century and is focused on a female apothecary who has been dispensing poisons to other women who are desperate to kill the men in their lives and liberate themselves. And the other is a present day plot which is focused on an aspiring historian who stumbles upon an old apothecary's vial. Being a researcher that she is pulled down a rabbit hole of these unsolved apothecary murders from the 18th century. I'm intrigued. I have an unhealthy number of books on my shelves about poison. I don't know what that says about me, to be quite honest. But I think what really sold me on this book was one of the quotes on the blurb, which I'm pulling up on my phone, which is subversive and intoxicating exploration of women rebelling against a man's world. If there's a feminist spin on anything, I'm reading it. So that was all I really needed to know. So I'm really hoping that it's able to live up to that really provocative statement. We'll see. I'll report back. The next book I want to talk about is The Lamplighters by Emma Stonex, and it's inspired by a true story. And I think the first time I actually heard about this story was from BuzzFeed Unsolved, of all places. So if I am able to find that video, I will link it for you guys because it was actually crazy. But the basis of the story is that 3 lighthouse keepers mysteriously vanish without a trace from their post, which is off the Cornish coastline, and the story follows the lives of the wives they've left behind, who are approached some 20 years later by a writer who is intent on solving this mystery. And I'm really hoping that this novel captures the same bizarre elements of the story that inspired it, because some of the things that happen seemed almost supernatural from my recollection, and so I feel like this will be particularly atmospheric. And I mean, I do really love a good remote location in a book, so I think this could be really, really promising. The next book that I want to talk about is Wild Women and the Blues by Denny S. Bryce, and this book also has a dual plot line. Part of it is set in 1920 Jazz Age Chicago, which was the huge draw here for me. The number of times that I have watched Chicago is probably obscene, but so the actual setting is really a draw for me. And in this, a sharecropper's daughter is working hard in this jazz scene that is addled with gangsters, bootleggers, and also celebrities. And then in present day, that 110-year-old jazz performer is this potential missing link for a film student. I need some Roaring Twenties fiction in my life. Considering how 2020 went, I need to believe that we are approaching our own Roaring Twenties when life will be fun again and we won't be sitting at home in our sweats. So there we go. The next book is Of Women in Salt by Gabriela Garcia. This book has appeared on, I think, every published 2021 most anticipated releases list that I saw. And yes, the hype concerns me because hype gives me a rash and terrifies me. But this does actually sound really, really good. It is a multi-generational saga that seems to be focused on the relationships of mothers and daughters, and also seems to be set over the course of a handful of generations, from 19th century in cigar factories in Cuba to Miami and also Mexico. And it also seems to be dealing with some of the issues that we have today with ICE and the detention centers. So there's a lot to unpack here about the Latinx experience. I love too that this book is an own voice story. The author, Gabriela Garcia, is the daughter of immigrants from Cuba and Mexico. So part of me wonders how much of this is going to be semi-autobiographical, or at least inspired by the women in her own family. But in general, I just think that this is going to be a beautiful, powerful story. The next book is Libertie by Kaitlyn Greenidge. And this book is interesting to me because it's inspired by one of the first female black doctors. The main character is a freeborn black woman in Reconstruction America. Her mother is white passing and a physician herself, and dreams of her daughter going to medical school and practicing with her, but her daughter is not as light-skinned as she is. She's kind of not sold on this plan, it seems like, and ends up agreeing to marry this young man who brings her to Haiti under the promise, or under the guise, that she will be his equal there. And what turns out happening is that she is subordinate to not only her new husband, but basically all men. I know that of late I've been really drawn to these stories with this concept of white passing black women. I'm thinking Passing by Nella Larson or The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. And I think that's in part because that is my own experience. I am a white passing black woman, and many of my family members are not. And so I think being able to find books where my own experience might be reflected back in some way is really important to me. So I am really hoping that that is part of the plot that we see developed, but whether it is or whether it isn't, I do think that this is going to be a really interesting book. So the next book is The Women of Chateau Lafayette by Stephanie Dray, and this is another historical fiction that is inspired by true events. It has 3 plot lines though, following 3 different time periods. So one is largely set around the time of the American and French Revolutions. Then the next is set during World War I, or around World War I, when obviously France is being decimated by trench warfare. And then the last bit is World War II focused and set kind of during the French occupation by the Nazis. I love reading about revolutions and resistance, and I'm particularly drawn to both world wars. So I really do think that it will be up my alley, since it's kind of touching all 3 of those time periods for me. But I do really enjoy that the emphasis in this story is on the women who are protecting this castle, when historically it was men protecting castles from a siege. So that to me sounds like a really promising premise, and again, since it is based on a true story, I'm all ears. The next book is Leonora in the Morning Light by Michaela Carter, and this is another case of a historical fiction that is the novelization of a historical figure. In this case, it is the story of Leonora Carrington, a surrealist artist, and her coming of age during World War II. And I am intrigued by this because in the blurb I knew all of the other surrealists that were mentioned: Pablo Picasso, Man Ray, Salvador Dali, etc. But I had never heard of Leonora Carrington. I am really drawn to stories like this, the stories that take women who have been kind of relegated to the footnotes of history, pulls them out, makes them the focus of their own story, and tries to make a wider audience aware of their legacy and impact. So I am really excited and really happy to be given an opportunity to learn more about Leonora Carrington's life, her legacy, the influence she might have had on the Surrealist movement, and all of that. And even, I know that this is fiction, so you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. There will also be snippets of history that can hopefully help me to learn more about her and encourage me to do more digging on my own independently. The next book is The Widow Queen by Elzbieta Cherezinska. I am butchering this last name, but this is in a very similar vein to the book that I just spoke about. It's taking a woman who's been forgotten through most of history and putting her life and legacy at the forefront. In this case, this is a Polish queen who rebelled against her father's ambitions to use his 3 daughters and their marriages as political pawns, and was aspiring to take a throne for herself without a man at her side. She sounds like a badass, and I am here for this story. I am here for it. It says volume 1, so I'm wondering if this is like a duology, a trilogy, or something like that. This also was previously published in Poland, in Polish, so this is the first time it's being translated into English. And since one of my goals is to read more translated works by women, I am very excited about this one. I'm really excited about this one because I don't really know that much about Poland or their royalty, and so this will be different for me, and I like different. Occasionally, not often, but occasionally I do like different. The last book that I want to talk about is Remote Sympathy by Chidgey, and it is World War II historical fiction. This felt different to me though, and I think largely because the main characters seem to be German, and also it's dealing with this idea of bystander in action. So the book is set within a community located near Buchenwald concentration camp. The officials are telling this community that Buchenwald is just a plain old labor camp, nothing to see here. And so it's this idea that they probably have some inkling that there's something not right. This book, I think, has the possibility of being terrifying, emotional, and really unsettling. It is obviously dealing with the Holocaust, which is a very emotional and heavy topic, but I think one of the things that makes it unsettling is that so many of us have this propensity, this inclination to look back on history and those moments and say, well, I would have acted differently. And it seems like this book is going to say, but would you have really? That is an uncomfortable question to be asked and to have to face. I am really hoping that it is that sort of uncomfortable, that it does elicit that discomfort, because that's really, really powerful, and a really, really powerful message about bystander in action, and that if you aren't acting and know that something bad is being done, then you are as guilty as those parties who are actively participating. So it seems like it's going to be a really heavy book, a really emotional book. So saying that I'm looking forward to reading this book doesn't seem right to me, but I am interested in opening myself to the critique on society that I think this book is going to deliver. And that is it for my 2021 most anticipated releases, historical fiction edition. And I am really looking forward to getting my hands on all of these books once they are released. I will be back with another edition of this video that focuses on other genres, nonfiction, romance, etc., etc., etc. But for now, I want to just thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll talk to you soon. Bye!